Welcome to the Future Barrister podcast, or if you're looking at us through our YouTube channel at Alignthebar. I'm very happy that you've joined again, and today we have a very exciting guest. We've been trying to do this for quite some time. We have some time zones between us, but today we have a podcast with Debbie Davis, and today we'll be exploring all things law degree in England, whether that's the LLB or the GDL or all of the other variations in between. And we'll do a deep dive into skills, coaching, and why that is actually the ultimate necessity for every law student. So Debbie, welcome. And why don't you introduce yourself to our people?
Hi, Neve. So nice to be here. Lovely to see you again. Great. I'm really, really happy that you are doing this podcast and this type of work. As you said, I'm a tutor. I've been one for over 20 years, and I am very interested at the moment in talking to and helping students understand what's needed to be successful in their law studies.
Great. Thank you so much. So tell us, for the average person who probably doesn't know, what are the main differences between the LLB and the GDL?
Yeah, so good question to start with. The LLB is a program of study that happens over a period of time. Usually, the least amount of time you'll be studying is 2 years, but it's normally 3 years to 5 years that you'll be doing more of a gradual, in-depth study of the law. Whereas GDL or postgraduate conversion courses, they're much shorter. I used to like to describe them as like the condensed law degree, where you would be doing a fast-tracked, intense period of study for probably about a year.
Good. So in terms of studying only, how should those two students approach those two degrees differently?
Um, I think, to be honest, for the postgraduate student who should already have some experience of studying at that level of study, there should already be some structured skills in place, because what they need to do is the same. It's just that for the postgraduate, the conversion student, they should already be able to do it and therefore work at speed.
Mm.
Whereas the LLB student has that little bit more time to get used to how to deal with the wealth of the material and what else is needed in order to succeed in law.
So is that your experience in the classroom, that they grapple or they grasp concepts a bit quicker or exam techniques a bit quicker on the GDL rather than the LLB?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that they grasp concepts quicker. I'd hate to put that pressure on a conversion student, because the law is the law. When you come to it first time as an LLB or postgrad, it can be a bit of a shock. But I would say that you tend to be able to get students into the groove, for want of better words, quicker if they've already had that university study experience, to be honest.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I remember coming to uni where you taught. You never taught me, funny enough, but our paths sort of crossed many times through a very good mutual friend who remains a good mutual friend to this day,
Yes,
actually.
yes,
And
it's true.
I remember my first semester, taking my exams and having always been a really good student, thinking I'm going to get really good grades and just really struggling, if I have to be quite honest. Um,
Yeah,
and that first set of average, mediocre grades really set me up like,
yeah.
"Oh, you're never going to get any better than that." So I can see how having completed a previous degree might have assisted, because it's almost like you going into a fourth year of study rather than a new degree. So I can see the benefits of actually doing a GDL, but it's not for everyone, obviously.
No, no.
Um, so if we just piggyback on that, what are the common mistakes that you find first year law students would make, and limited to studying? So studying techniques, maybe just what are the common things that you see repeated
Yeah.
each time with first year students?
I certainly see. What I would say is the common mistakes I see with first year students is equally applicable to conversion students who
Mhm.
come to the law new. And it's because of the sheer amount of law that these students have to deal with. And because of that, you'll find students spending too much time focusing on that and the need to learn and memorize the law,
Right.
rather than what is actually needed which is learning how to use that knowledge. And I would say that that is probably the biggest mistake across the board. First year students and conversion students must learn how to use their law alongside learning their law.
So how practically, how do you do that? How do you avoid that mistake?
I think as well, it takes a lot of nerve, even when we tell them. So, I have always worked in sort of undergrad and postgrad level, more postgrad, but I've always worked with this level of student, and trying to get them to understand that we are now approaching studies very differently to what they perhaps were used to before, with a complex type of topic, and trying to give them the confidence that they need to take on board the advice that we're giving, which is, we're not trying to trick you, we're not trying to be horrible, we're literally just trying to make you properly manage this topic. And you therefore need to learn and understand that you have to know your stuff and learn how to use your stuff at the same time. Start at the same time. Don't wait and hope that it will suddenly fall into place,
Right.
or you'll have time later on. Learn to do them together from the beginning.
Well, that's really good. So rather than just stuffing your brain with statutes and case law and then trying to learn exam technique, you do it together.
Same time,
That's
same
really,
time.
oh, that's so good. Why didn't I know that?
Well, to be honest with you, I have to say that and I know it was a long time ago, but when I was when I was studying law, I did it as an undergrad. So I did an undergraduate degree. So in some respects, I was lucky because I learned that a
Right,
little bit late, but I had time to put it right. You see what I mean?
right.
So my first year, where I spent the whole year grappling with learning law, getting to an exam and thinking, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing, was painful. And then I recognized that that's not the way to do it. You learn to do it at the same time. And the next, it sounds ridiculous because I'm not the brainiest person in the world, but it just made law so much more straightforward, so more manageable. My grades were just suddenly, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe. And I was like, do them together.
I love that. And I think that'd be so relevant even for the back horse, but I digress. Because I think a lot of the poor performance on the back horse is because of that. You're learning all this information, but
Yeah,
not enough time to apply it. And it just goes by so quickly
yeah,
that by the
yeah.
end, you're like, what have I done?
It's true.
But that's really good.
100%.
That's a really good tip. I think students should definitely take that. Okay, good. So I'm going to move on to the next sort of question section area. And we're going to look at different strategies that students can use. Um, if you look at independent studying, what strategies can students use to manage their workload effectively?
Hmm.
Because a law degree is a lot,
Yes,
how bright
yes,
you are. And so what
yes,
tips, what advice can you give to students who have to do this thing
yeah,
independently? For some of them, they've never lived away from home,
yeah,
and things like that. So how do they manage that with the pressure of now you're living in a shared
yeah.
flat and this one
I
was a
know.
pub? How do they manage that workload efficiently?
I think the thing with studying law is initially recognizing that you're teaching yourself or you're getting yourself ready for practice. Easy for me to say because I've been a student, then I went into practice, and now I'm teaching, and I know what happens when you get into practice.
Mm,
So to recognize that everything you're doing in practice will set yourself up for a good working habit when you get out into the field. So for me, it's all about consistency and organization, particularly as, like you said, there are competing things for your time,
yeah,
like going out, having a life. Do you
yeah.
know what I mean? We all have other things to do. Totally remember that. But I think if you can get yourself organized and be consistent in how you then approach your study, it's going to help you manage your workload, albeit independently. I was a part-time independent student, so I totally understand what it can be like when you don't necessarily have that structure of a face-to-face full-time
Yeah.
type study. Although saying that, there's always an independent study element in law, we know that. So I would say that you need a structured plan that you follow breaking your tasks down into manageable exercises. And often your universities or law schools will help you. They'll tell you what you should be doing. Do it, follow it. Do you know what I mean? The
Yeah.
steps, they are, they do tend to be worthwhile. And make sure that you are actively learning. And I hate to use teacher jargon, but it's so important that you are actively learning rather than passively learning. So when you are, anything you're doing it for a purpose. You're testing your knowledge. You're checking your ability to use your law. Very structured, and that's going to help you align, which is why I love your,
The
your
name.
company name. It helps you because it does. It helps you align your thought process into what it needs to be for your exams and then into practice, for sure.
So passive, not passive learning, active learning.
Active learning.
Active learning. All the tips I should have learned, but you know what? Learning is a lifelong skill. So I'm taking
Lifelong
all
skill.
of it now. So we'll move on to a few more tips. I'm looking down at my questions, obviously. What are your top tips for excelling in legal research? So we have legal research, essay writing, and problem questions, which is usually the three sort of
Yeah.
big tenets of studying. You have to do legal research, essay writing, or problem question. I love the problem question because I always remembered facts of cases. And
Yes.
questions
Yes.
would usually be tied or very similar. So if Debbie stole a can of soda from Tesco, I knew the case I needed to use. So I loved problem questions. So yeah, what would you say are your top tips for students to do very well in each of those areas? So let's start with legal research, or if you want to take all three of them together.
No, that's fine. I love the fact that you love something because I instantly went back to when I was a student and hated all of it because I didn't understand how to do any of it. So I was just like, no,
No, I love
don't you just read? Don't you just read this stuff, please?
that.
So for legal research, I would say that it can be overwhelming because once you, it's almost like going you go down rabbit holes, don't you? And then before you know it, you've got a warrant of all these different um, lines of information, knowledge, investigation that it opens up. So I would say that the main thing is to make sure you know how to do it properly. Your university or law school should have a willing library team who will help you if you're not sure. So if you are reading the authoritative sources like Westlaw, LexisNexis, Heinlaw, Emerald, if you're using all of this and you're finding it all a little bit overwhelming, or you're not really sure, or you're reading something but you can't remember where you saw that, when you come to use it, and what's that got to do, and how do you find this, use your library team.
Yeah.
100% use your library team.
Good.
I would say.
Good, actually. I would say that. And just for our listeners and our viewers, we do have a few articles on the website and videos on our YouTube channel about our scholar referencing and just how to do a little bit of legal research. So get that as well. I'll probably put a link somewhere around there or there to that video.
Brilliant.
Great.
Absolutely brilliant. Best
Yeah.
thing you could give somebody when they're starting. So well done, you. Brilliant.
I think throughout uni, I still had to keep checking how to do referencing each time I have to do it. It's not something that just sticks up there. And I hate it.
And there's different rules, isn't there, for different unis? Some unis use Harvard, some unis use Oscular. I mean, you've got to know which one they're using and what
And
it means for you.
even between the modules. This week
Yeah.
you might have to use Harvard and next week Oscular, and it's just
Yeah.
I hate all of it even now. But it's what has to be done. And similarly, what would you say for essay writing and problem question? I know in at least during my time, there was almost a consensus that you go for the problem questions because it was a more sure way of getting grades. But that discouraged people from doing essays, but that's not a good thing actually at all. Because legal is very much more essay style than problem question. But how can students do well in those two areas?
And I agree with you, although in my experience, I would say that neither of them are done as well as they should be, although I totally accept that essay writing is usually the poorer of the two. For essay writing, you have to look at it as if you are you're being asked to provide an opinion, a reasoned opinion on a particular issue. So you're using the law to sort of review, investigate, can, discuss and consider it as if in practice you were taking part in a debate on an issue, or your firm or chambers were asking you to write a blog or a newsletter on a particular area of law. It's much more practically theoretical, is what I like
Yeah.
to talk to it about. But for that, you need these critical thinking skills or critical evaluation skills, which you've probably seen plastered over every
Yeah.
job advert for any job, to be
Yeah.
honest. Currently, it is the big skill to have, and it is a skill, and it's quite a tricky one. It takes a while to develop it. I like to think that I've worked hard on making sure I know how to do it and certainly how to teach it.
Yeah.
But you need to be able to critically evaluate. In short, you've got to be able to find credible sources on a specific issue, thoroughly investigate it, analyze it, and then go on to evaluate your analysis. That's kind of like a condensed, shortened version of what critical thinking is. All I would say to your listeners is that obviously, as whether you're going to the bar or whether you're going to become solicitors, it's an incredibly important skill to have, and it's one that you need to consistently work on. It doesn't just develop. You have to understand that it takes time, and with proper guidance you can get it. In the exams, I think the problem is that students don't get it, and that's why you'll end up just getting a statement of, descriptive narrative with I think this is great, I think it's not great, which is where the
Yeah.
poor marks come,
Yeah.
to
And I
be honest.
think even to add to that, there's another added element for international students because I think UK universities have a very prescriptive description of how they want essays to be written. And so
Yes.
an essay that actually is really at published level, and again, that's an experience I had with a friend recently, really good work, but did not score as high as she thought it would. And again, it's because there's such a prescriptive way that you need to
Yeah.
write for
Yeah.
Britain or for British universities as opposed
Yeah.
to, and that's common everywhere else, obviously, every
Yeah.
country, every region. So I think all of those things
Okay.
I think you have to understand before you get to exam level. Otherwise, you're spending time dealing with appealing your grade, whereas you need to focus on the next stage
I
of
agree.
your degree. And not that it's an incorrect action because your essay is good,
Mm.
but the university
Mm.
has a different idea, So
Yeah.
it's that. So that's
100%.
really helpful. That's just really helpful. And problem question, would there be any difference in the advice?
Yeah, there is a difference. There is a difference, and it's a difference that some students get, but even when they get it, they don't fully
Get
get it.
it.
And I'm like you. I love a problem question, but that's probably because we're practitioners. So it's that
That makes
practical
sense.
instinct
That
that
makes sense.
that we like assessing clients'
Yeah.
cases or clients' issues. I think the problem, coin of phrase, that I have is in the title. They're often billed as problem solving exercises. And I think as a lawyer, or as a would-be lawyer or a new lawyer, when you come in without that understanding that in law we have many meanings
Yeah.
for words, many students I find take the literal meaning of problem solve, and therefore they try and solve the problem. And I say it over because it can be a little bit frustrating because we have deliberately given you what happens in reality, which is that we're not here to solve matters. We're here to analyze, assess, and advise on
Advice.
matters.
Yeah.
And so for me, problem questions is all about learning how to analyze and assess a problem so that you can advise your client. And that's what I love teaching it, because I love
Yeah.
showing students quite quickly how you are different as a lawyer. This is your job as a lawyer. It's not what lay people think, non-lawyers think.
That's right. I love that. And I like that you basically have a blank canvas. You can give two options as long as there's a reason.
Yeah.
It could be a winding road, but as long as we get there in the end. And I think that's
Yes.
what I enjoyed about problem questions. So 100% take on what you've just said. I agree with you on that.
And of course, as a previous criminal defense lawyer,
Yeah.
You know, I spent my entire life doing what you've just said, which is giving clients options. Do you know what I mean? Because I couldn't guess what a jury was going to do. So there was no point, you know, when a client would invariably say, "Am I guilty, Deb?" And I'd have to say, "Well, I don't know." On the one hand, that kind of thing. So I agree with you 100%. And it's a joy to be able to explain that to students and get them to understand quite quickly
Yes.
what I mean when I'm saying you need to think like a lawyer.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. Awesome. I have a question, I think, but we've already done that because my question says, what is one piece of advice if you had to narrow it down to one for LLB students and then for GDL students? I think you've given a lot, but if you had to narrow it
Mhm.
down to one piece and you had 5 seconds to say, this is what you need to do.
You're asking a lawyer to do this now. You're asking a
Yeah,
lawyer to give
one piece of advice.
one piece of advice. Right. What one piece of advice?
But remember, even in real life, when you give that advice, you still need to take instructions from your client. So you're not telling them do this, but you're saying, listen, if you're starting off this
Yeah.
September, if you're starting off this summer, because we do have some summer
Yeah.
semesters,
Yeah.
this is what you need to do. Please do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that the most important thing, I think, is to recognize from the beginning that you will be a work in progress for a considerable period of time, that you should therefore be kind and patient to yourself and not think that, you know, everything is going to come easy, or if it doesn't come easy, you're never going to get it, or that, you know, you have to become a QC, you know, an accomplished lawyer immediately. You have to be patient and kind with yourself, learning the law and how to use the law at the same time, which I accept is more than one thing, I did say.
We'll take two. One is kind of more legal based on but let's pause for a second on that. I really love that. Be kind to yourself, because now when I look back, I mean, I graduated with a 2-1, but I
Mm-hmm.
had such high hopes just because I'd
Yeah.
always been a high achiever
Mm-hmm.
before that point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just looking back now and some of the struggles as an international student alone, without my family, and all of the other things that come with that financial and just
Mm-hmm.
stress, there's no way I could have performed any better at uni. Like
Mm-hmm.
looking back now, I can see that. But at the
Mm-hmm.
time, that was
Yeah.
just so depressing, so confidence destroying. It was
Yeah.
terrible. So that's a good piece of advice. Be kind to yourself. And
Yeah.
sometimes just take that pass and move on.
Yeah.
Don't even think about
Yeah.
it. Seriously, sometimes you have to do that.
Totally agree.
Just move.
Totally agree. I mean, I can totally empathize with what you're saying. I was first time anyone in my family had been to university. I decided to do it with no experience of higher education whatsoever. And then I decided to tell everyone I'm going to do law. And everyone's like, oh my goodness. And then I get there and just see a bunch of people who, as far as I was concerned, were so bright, much brighter than
Yeah,
me. They knew what they were doing. I didn't know what I was doing. And I spent a year because as you know, I did an undergrad first, just not really enjoying it and being horrible
yeah,
with myself, imposter syndrome, all the rest of it. And when you work on yourself, you know, the difference it made those final 2 years, the grade, I was like you, I managed to get it up to a 2-1.
yeah.
And that's just from being kind to yourself and learning about yourself, really.
That's a really good piece of advice because
Yeah,
looking back, I'm like, there's nothing more you could have done, sis.
yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%.
Yeah, so I'm gonna ask you a personal question now. What inspired you to start tutoring law students, and how has that journey been for you?
Uh, well, I'll have to be honest here, right? Because what I can't pretend it was something that I had ever planned to do. You know, I don't even know if I even planned to go into law. But anyway, what happened was I found myself as a criminal defense solicitor, practicing criminal defense solicitor, and a single mum, and
Mm,
they were not compatible at all. My clients' hours of work were did not help me with sitters. Do you know what I mean? I never was on time. I was always working during the night, and you know, I get it. So I had to find a job that was much more suitable for the kids. I went into teaching. Love it, absolutely loved it because I found out that what was important to me was being able to help students understand the need or what was needed, not just to succeed in an exam, but to get a job at the end of it. So I would say that taking care of students is what I find the best bit of this job, and I love it. Still love it.
And now you do private tutoring. What is it that you do now? Or can you give us a little bit of an idea of what you're working on in the background? Any
So
secrets?
I think what I've decided to do is recognizing. I mean, I'm like you, always know that there's a need to be able to develop your interpersonal skills, and I think it was recognizing that I wanted to focus on that more, and particularly help students like myself who had studied independently, asynchronously, to help develop a suite of courses that would get them being able to use that law. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Teaching law, okay, I can do it. So can lots of people. So can yourself. You know, my kids can read a law book and they have no intention of being lawyers. But it's the using of the law. So I'm doing a suite of exams on things like critical thinking, problem solving, note taking, time management, all those kind of packet of skills that prospective employers are now looking for.
Yeah, love it. And that's so needed. It's so
Yeah,
needed.
I
You
agree.
can tell the students who spent time focusing on those skills and
Mm,
how quickly they were able to progress to the
mm,
bar or to become a solicitor, as opposed to the students who might have the best grades. They might have a first, but that's all they
mm.
have in their pocket. So when you told me about this, I was very excited, and I'm looking forward to what's coming in terms of that. I'll keep everybody updated. I'll put your details as well in the description box so that people can reach you. Um, and can you share a success story from a student that you've worked with that really stood out to you? By the way, I should tell everybody that Debbie is one of those people you don't forget. All students knew her. I knew about her, although she never tutored me. So everybody knew her. She's that person. And then she's also friends with that other person. So the two of them together on campus was amazing. So tell me about one student
Oh,
that
you're lovely. You're lovely. It's very kind. Very, very kind.
you know.
Right. So a memorable story. You're being lovely, and now it's making me think that there's lots of students that I have worked with and had, some great success with. The one student that I perhaps wanted to tell you about was because they were on their last sit. They were on their final sit of an exam. There was a real desire to become a barrister, and they had, well, their family, international student, and their family had spent a lot of money
Mm.
getting them to this position, and they were on their final sit. And for me, I just wanted to work with that student and see what we could do. Some of the things we've already been discussing were apparent to me quite soon, which was working very hard and working very hard at learning law, not enough work at all on the ability to use that law, and a complete misunderstanding of how to do it. So it was getting lots of the things in place that should have been done at the beginning to get that student ready for their final sit, knowing that there was a lot at stake.
Yeah.
And so the added anxiety and stress, and I actually did speak to the family because I knew that this was going to be a challenge for them, and I didn't want additional pressure on this student. And so I was having almost tutorials with the family to keep them away from
That's it.
the student while I was trying to help get that student ready. The thing that I'm most pleased about was how hard that student worked and how much they took on board what was
Mm.
being said. And I had that student go from a failing student to a distinction student.
That's it.
Oh
That's
my
the
God.
success stories, isn't it?
Unbelievable. And to know that that student had that potential
Yeah, that's it.
all
Everybody,
the time,
that,
all the time. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Was working hard, is now working smart. It was a joy.
that's
Yeah.
Yes, I love it.
Definitely
We
possible.
have a motto here. We say, we work smart and hard. Because some people
Yeah,
tell you work smart, not hard, and some people
yeah,
tell you work hard. We do both of them. So we work hard smartly. Um,
yes, I
I love
agree.
that story. My sister is a lifelong teacher. That's what she does as a profession for years. She loves
Right. Yeah.
and I always say I could never do that. But actually, tutoring from 2021, I love it.
Yes.
Especially when you get those cases. It's the last
Yes.
week, and I've had a few of them. And I had a student last year, similar. I spoke to her mom, the dad, everything, and they're in
Bless.
a different country.
Helpless.
Everyone and I'm like, okay, pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the joy that comes at the end of that. So thank you for that story. I love tutoring, actually. I never thought I would.
Yes.
I love seeing students get it.
Yeah.
And it's why I started offering tutoring because that was never the original business idea. I started tutoring
Right.
for a different company and I thought, oh my God, this is so good. I
Yeah.
can see students' grades and the wires and the wheels turning, and I thought, oh, I want to do this. And I can see the impact.
Yeah.
I know there's students who, if they did not take those extra tutoring sessions, would no way pass their exams. And not
Yeah.
because they're not smart, it's just
Exactly.
because of the way the teaching sometimes,
Yeah.
not any discredit to the universities, but people sometimes just need that added touch. And
Yeah.
so that's why we offer tutoring on the website because some students do need that. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Okay. Yeah.
Good. So we're going to move on to the second part of our podcast.
Okay.
And that might be good. So we've touched on it, but the question is really beyond coursework. What extracurricular activities or experiences can
Yeah.
enhance a law person's development, whether that's academic, professional, just what activities should people be getting involved in? And I'll give you an example. While I was at uni, there was once I was at Waterloo East and I was either going up or down the escalator. And I saw a colleague and she said, Niv, I've actually never seen you still. You're either going or coming. And that was my 3 years. That's true. I really worked my tail off. But what should people be getting involved in
Yeah.
to increase their chances of being recruited right at the end of their degree and postgrad studies?
It's so good that you are touching on this because it's now, I wouldn't say it was important. I would say it's essential now for students. And I say that from someone who feels sorry that my journey was so much different to what
Yeah.
your journey is now. There's so much more expected of you, but you got to do it.
Yeah.
And getting involved with extra curricular activities is an absolute must and must be factored into your studies. Obviously, there are the necessary. I think if you're a barrister, you must moot. I can't imagine you could do that job without mooting experience. But I think it's equally applicable if you're wanting to be a solicitor, because of higher rights. And I was a court advocate, so it's necessary. I think pro bono work. I know it's always tough to get pro bono work, but you can go outside of your university. There are institutions and companies now that offer your ability to try and do that kind of work. But I also think even if you can't get that, you should also, as well as that, you should be looking at non-law work, because as customer service providers, which is what we are, more and more firms, chambers are interested in how we interact with people. And so for that reason, I don't think you have to limit your experiences to those traditional legal methods. I think you need them, but I think also anything you can do with different types of people will be really helpful, to
I,
be honest.
I agree with that 100%. I've had many lives before this one. And in one of them, I did sales and marketing. And to work at the self-employed bar, that has been a massive tool in my arsenal.
Yeah,
Like, because really, yes, the clerks are there. Yes, Chambers is there, especially if it has a glittery name. But when it comes down to it, you really do have to sell
yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
And that knowledge and that know-how has been a tool in my pocket. So it's really not just mooting, although that's essential, I would say. You should
yeah,
have, if you're applying for a pupillage, you should have done some kind of advocacy. And what it does, it gives you things to put on your answer. So when you say,
Yeah.
I like advocacy, and you cannot say what you've done,
Yeah.
cannot compete with a student who has mooted. And I've been marking pupillage applications this week. So, it's interesting to see,
Yeah.
what just what's on there. So
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%. You need to have those skills in your pocket.
Yeah.
And if I can just share another story here. While I was at uni, I'd never mooted before. But again, I'd done my own independent research, what it takes to be a barrister. And that was somewhere on my small, Microsoft Word document of things I needed to tick off my list. And so I
Yes.
harassed the mooting coordinator for entire semester. When are we having mooting? I think probably I gave her some fire to do some bits because I wanted to do something. And I got so involved with the mooting society, not because I had any experience, but because I had that desire. And sometimes desire does trump
Yeah.
experience, at least in the early days, and
Agree.
then I built on that. So I would encourage students get involved, get to do certain things. I remember also at my uni we didn't have I think the African Caribbean Society, and there's so many
Okay.
others. It was
Mm.
dormant for years, and I think the engagement team had actually been trying to get it revived, and they were willing to put their money where their mouth was. And I was like, great, I'll be the president. Why not? So you find things
Wow.
to do because then you can organize events, you can
Yeah.
speak, and that gives you so much to add to your applications for
Yes.
pupillage and for training contracts and everything else. So I agree
Agree.
with you get involved with these things. Um, if we can move on to something
Pretty
you
amazing. Well done.
thank you, I'll take that. If we can move on to critical thinking,
Mm.
why do you think this is so? Let's just do that.
Mm.
Good. Why do you think critical thinking is so important?
That's quite an easy one, actually. It's so important because it's all about thorough investigation objectively. So it's all about being able to look at things from different perspectives and delving deep. We can get deep. I think I can't remember the name of that. I keep almost going deep, deep, deep undercover. Axophone, stupid, but anyway, that's what got into my head. It's also then being able to come look at the huge big picture objectively and then come up with a well-reasoned, logical opinion from having done that deep dive into a specific issue.
Love that. And something you said quite early on the podcast, I want us to go back to it now. I sort of saved it for when we got closer to the ending. And you said confidence building. And
Mm.
that has been a tagline of ours for a very long time because I think it's almost the make or break of a student.
Mm.
Confidence building, confidence retention, confidence
Mm.
overall. Speak to that in terms of law students, the value, how can they build it organically and not to pretend? Because sometimes
Yeah,
I look on LinkedIn and I think, oh, I know what you're trying to do, but even through the words, you can tell that it's almost a template. And of course, I'm superimposing my thoughts on some people. But how do
yeah.
you naturally, organically build that confidence to be in that space, especially if, like yourself, like myself, never had a lawyer in the family,
Mm.
with the added element of maybe an international student or not. Although, in my opinion, international or not, as long as your background doesn't have a lawyer, it comes down
Yeah.
to the same thing. How do we build that confidence and how crucial? I think it's crucial, but do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. And I also agree that it's a difficult one to do. And I don't in any way want to suggest that there's a magic formula or one way to do it, or even if you do it, that you'll end up having the confidence um, that you think you should have. But I do think that um, some confidence is better than no confidence.
Mm,
And so take what you can get, and don't beat yourself up if you still feel you've got a way to go, which is why I'm a strong believer of remembering you're a work in progress. I think you have to be much more aware of what you're doing. If you are checking in on yourself and recognizing what progress you're making, and you learn how to positively self critique that and take that on board, you're going to have to, in my experience, accept at some point that you can do some things.
Yeah.
And once you get used to doing that,
Yeah.
and I'm speaking from personal experience, I got myself into a bit of a deep hole and then had to accept that actually I did know things, I could use that, and I knew that I could pass an exam. And I would definitely say from the students I've worked with, and I've always been saying to them, once you know, you have to accept it and you keep running with it, because when you get into that exam, you will know how you're doing. When you go to a job interview, you will know how you're doing. And again, from my personal experience, I'm very proud to say that I knew I was going to pass my exams in years 2 and 3 and how well I was going to pass them.
Yeah. I
And
love that.
it's not to be arrogant. It wasn't in any way suggesting I was the bee's knees, but I had worked hard and smart,
Yeah.
like you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it gave me the confidence to do that. I'm not the most confident person in the world, never will be, but I know what I can do and I know what I can't do. If I make a mistake, I'm okay with it. I own it and I learn from it.
Yes.
I'm a constant work in progress and I'm old.
Oh God. I love that. But one of the things you said I love is check in on yourself. Um,
Mm,
and I think even over the past year, I've been using that tool so much. Like
mm,
even students right now who are getting interviews, first round for pupillage, because we're in the heat,
right.
we're in the hot
Mm,
season right now. I say, listen, celebrate this thing as if you already got it, because that
yeah,
is over 100 people applied and they've cut it down to what, 20, and you've made
yeah,
it. Like that's a big thing. It means you can do it. And I think if we learn that quite early on at the start, the onset of your degree, that's going to
yeah,
just so well. And so I
absolutely.
100% agree with check in on yourself. And then you're like, oh, I was able to do small A. So then next I'll be able to do big A. And that is how you build confidence
Yeah,
over layers and layers of confidence. I have a little bit of a story. I think it's funny. I don't know. Um, but
yeah,
on my undergrad, I failed one paper and it was EU law. And again, I just
understandable.
never been a poor performing student. And perhaps that happened to make me a bit more empathetic as well. At least it assisted in helping me be more empathetic. Because when I got the grade, sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, I'm not joking, I thought it was an error. So I messaged the tutor and I was like, hey, I just got this grade, but could you please update the system? Like a serious email, because I was like, I don't feel that's how confident I was that I don't fail papers. Although I very much knew going into that EU paper exam that I haven't understood anything all semester long. So confidence is a good thing. And I agree. If any student, like just work on your confidence. And
Yeah,
I think even outside of studying, so for me, I will bake. And so right now, gluten-free sourdough bread is beating my I am not winning. I have wasted so much material, but I'm not giving up. This is my goal. I started from last year. It's
that is so hard.
but but I'm doing other things very well. So I'll do every time I start getting demotivated, I'll do a plain banana bread and then my family will enjoy it. I'll be like, oh, I'm still good at something. And
Mm,
that helps as well. So even while you're studying and you might be hitting the wall with maybe criminal law, find
mm,
something else, even if it's a short case summary that you
mm,
read and you're like, oh, before I used to need 3 hours to read this. But now I was able to read, analyze, retain in
yes,
1 hour. And that is a big win. So it's taking those checking in moments and big
yeah,
wins. I thought that was really good what you said there. And I probably will do something just on that topic because that's massive.
yeah,
You're going to
agree.
need it throughout your career. So yeah, good. I love that. What else did I want to ask you, Debbie? We've already touched legal writing, so I don't think, unless there's anything else you wanted to tell students how to improve their legal writing skills, I think you've pretty much really done that
Yeah,
throughout.
I think I have the only, I don't know if we're going on to exam writing. All I would say is that to improve, and I know you know this and would have told your listeners this already, you have to keep practicing. And so it's all about incorporating practice writing as you're going along as well, which students always, well, have constantly told me, I haven't got time, Deb,
Yeah,
how can I do this? And I'm just like, it's a false economy to think you haven't got time, because the more you do it, the better you get. And again, from personal experience, I'm sure you were the same. Writing was almost a daily occurrence in my study. You don't need loads of time, 10
Yeah.
minutes,
Yeah.
you're right every day. It's amazing how you progress.
Yeah.
So that's the only bit I would add, really, because it's my constant nag to students.
Excellent. I would just write over and over, through the paper,
Yeah,
rewrite. By the time
rewrite.
you get to
Mm,
exams, you're really not even revising anything. You already
thank you.
know what you have to do. And I encourage students as well. And sometimes people think this is a sales tactic, but I encourage students to actually take some sessions at the start of the module with us. Um, Come and understand what you need to do. Come and understand the technique so that by
Mhm,
the time you actually sit in a lecture hall, you sit with your
mhm.
tutor during tutorials. What there used to be tutorials and something else, I forget. Lectures. Um,
Set lectures. Yeah, yeah.
that's right. You
Hmm.
already understand what to do, and so you're already ahead. And I encourage students to do that. We offer group sessions. So come on with some of your mates and have 3 sessions with us. You know, it will be cheaper for you and you're getting ahead of the game because it's a cutthroat business out there. Pupillage keeps getting harder to attain. Becoming a solicitor is becoming harder.
Yeah,
That's right or wrong. The reality is, if you want to push your head
yeah.
and get in there, you have to make yourself stand out. And so I encourage students to get some sessions before they actually start the modules at uni.
Yes.
So get in touch with us if you want to do that.
Mm,
Um, Common mistakes that law students make. We've already touched on that, I think.
yeah.
And
Hmm.
then, okay, I like that. I know you've done it, but again, if you had to say one thing that would make a student stand out when they're applying for training contracts, when they're applying for those entry-level legal roles, if you were looking at it through a recruiter's lens and everybody had the same thing, what is the one thing that would stand out to you on an application?
Well, I've given this a lot of thought, which is why, like you, I'm very interested in helping students because I think there are, again, two things. But interpersonal skills we've already dealt with, so I don't need to tackle that one. But it's the next thing is how to manage AI
That's really
and
good.
how are you dealing with it? How are you using it? Because I'm not totally against AI. I can see the concerns with it, and I do have concerns with it. Just so you know, last week I asked AI to write me an essay, and it was brilliant. All the law was wrong, but it was constructed brilliantly. But then when I checked the law, none of it was right. They literally made up some cases and etc. But AI is now obviously a force to be reckoned with. It's being taken on board by firms and chambers. I'm sure I'm more
Yeah.
aligned with what's happening in solicitors' offices. Uh, New recruits have to manage it. They have to know how the firm they're going to or chambers they're going to is using it, how they use it, and what they need to be able to do that AI can't do to make them remain appealing.
That's really good. Actually, last 2 weeks ago, I attended a conference, and
Mm.
one of the talks was about fabricated documents in the family courts. And right there, the barrister just showed us an example. We asked, I think it was
Mm.
ChatGPT or one of them, to give us a statement, a bank statement, and we gave them the details. And exact replica
Yeah,
of a bank statement. And so she was
brilliant.
telling us how to navigate that and identify fabricated documents. But it's here to stay. That's the reality of it. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and it does have its good things. So
Mm.
in the small business, I do use AI to assist us with scheduling,
Mhm.
assist us with planning. It's very good.
Yeah.
But yes, if lawyers are starting to depend on it for writing, that
Hmm.
is not going to, it doesn't help, it doesn't inspire at all.
No,
Um,
I agree. No, I agree.
so I agree with you.
Yeah.
And it's I've had students in the past year who, when AI was really coming out and everybody was talking about it, they had actual assignments where they were required to use AI.
Yeah.
Now we have all universities saying you have to sign a declaration that you didn't use
Yeah.
AI. And that's confusing for students. So I think, again, providers, universities need to get on the same page because
Yeah.
that's quite confusing. And trying to prevent them from using it entirely is not helpful either.
Yeah, I agree with you.
They're going
And
into a
it's
lot, yeah.
it's a huge discussion, and I equally went to a conference where there were lots of ideas being thrown in, and I agree with you. Universities are not quite settled on how they're going to do it yet. Um, so it's a bit of a watch this space. And in the meantime, I agree with you. Your listeners need to show that they're not using it, and when they are using it, they're using it in the right way.
That's right.
Is what
That's
I would
right.
say.
I would say that.
Mhm.
Good. And so we were going to end on confidence, but I think we've used a nice chunk of our time
Yeah.
on that, which I'm really happy about because I tell students confidence is going to show in your answers when you make your applications.
Mhm.
It's going to come across in your essay writing, in your problem questions. And even if you do make it to interview, that confidence or lack of thereof is going to show. So
Yes.
besides all the other things you do in confidence building, and I think Debbie gave us a really good nugget today, is keep checking in on yourself. Even running. So if 15 minutes used to burn you out before, but now you can do it, it just tells your brain, hey, I can do something else.
Mhm.
And that is key. So check in on yourself, be kind to yourself, and keep building as you go. So we want to know a little bit more about your plans for your business and how people can get in touch with you. I know you cannot give us everything now, but what you can share and how can you help students now?
Oh, thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity to do that, and to make it clear to students that my desire is exactly the same as Neve's. It's all about helping students really fulfill their potential. So I am designing and in the process of creating a suite of of asynchronous courses, because I am aware of that additional support that you should or could give students when they're independently studying. So I'm picking key skills like critical thinking, problem solving, how to revise, how to study at higher education, and I'm preparing a suite of courses. And I hope to have them landing quite soon. Um, it's all this tech stuff. I'm talking about tech stuff. I'm not a techie person, and I've now got this tech stuff that I've got to get my head around. But yeah, I'm like you. I think that we can really help students fulfill their potential um, within the conventional university, law school type setting. And that's what I want to do as well.
Right. And how can students find you right now? I know you don't have a running website now, but how can they reach you
Yeah.
if you needed to?
I don't have one, but I will. I have got an email. I do have a course email, so I've got that far. So if you'd like to contact me, if you'd like to work with me as well on any particular skill, Debbie at legalskillsworkshops.com. I'll give that to Neve as well, and you
Good.
can get in touch with me directly for any particular assistance. I like to do the front end as well. I'm very much interested in setting you up to study properly from the beginning and specifically work on skills like problem solving, critical thinking, things like that.
Good. So I'm going to put that up while you're saying that as well.
Mm.
And do you work with SQE students? I wasn't quite clear on that because I know that's such a big struggle for
It
so
is.
many at the moment. Do you tutor students at all?
Yeah, I can teach students. Again, I can, my over the years, I have taught a number of academic topics. I would say that my favored topics are criminal law and criminal evidence and practice. But to be honest with you, what I'm really interested in is helping students get through this exam. I'm not going to comment on that exam apart from I want to help you get through it
Yeah.
and understand how problem solving will help you get through that this exam.
Thank you so
Mhm.
much. I'm very happy to hear that. So, Debbie, anything else that you would like to say to our listeners before we close off? I mean, it's been amazing. I knew it was going to be a
Yeah.
kind of girl chat moment, but giving up
Yes.
really good information to students. Thank you for finally sitting down with me. Our schedules are all over the place,
Oh, they definitely are.
but it's
But apart from and again, I'm not trying to say this for any reason. I think that when I heard about what you were doing, the reasons why I wanted to come and speak to you are, I hope, evident. Now I'm so happy to hear that this kind of help is coming to students at this stage of their study. I think that it's important. I think that the service you're giving, like the service I want to give, is going to be so beneficial to students. And I'm grateful for the time that you've given me to talk to you as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Debbie. It's been a pleasure. And we'll be in touch, obviously. We'll be talking
Yes,
quite a bit. I think
yes,
our businesses are going to be working together
I
very
think
much
so.
so. And if anything, we do have this mutual friend to keep us connected. So do
Yeah,
keep in touch. And thank you so much for speaking with me. Um,
thank you. Nice to see you.